7 years of waiting are almost over. In less than 2 weeks, The Last of Us Part 2 launches. And I honestly don't know how to feel about it. Hey stragglers and tourists, my name is TheiPadCat, and today's video is going to be all about the long, sometimes disappointing, sometimes bumpy, but almost always very exciting road to The Last of Us Part 2. And what I think about it all now that we're at the very end of it. Now, for those that are wondering or are simply just trying to avoid spoilers, rest assured, I am not going to be talking about the recent leaks nor the following controversies in any capacity aside from that they happened. But that's enough of an intro, so without further ado,
let's get on with it.
It feels very strange that we're so close to the launch of Part 2 now. When the first game dropped, I was 14 years old and I had just finished 7th grade. I remember very clearly being creeped out by the unskippable ads for it that were all over YouTube at the time. The ones showing a clicker's shadow twisting and turning in unnatural ways, with a voiceover from the scene where Joel asks Tess if he needs to remind her what is out there.
Do I need to remind you what is out there?
It didn't really seem like my type of game at all, but alas, here we are. Once it launched, I watched PewDiePie's playthrough of it from start to finish and was captivated by it, but ultimately ended up forgetting about it since I didn't have the money to buy it and play it for myself. After that, some time passed and I moved on with my life. Eventually, Sony dropped the PS4 and The Last of Us Remastered not long after, which was when I first got my hands on the game. And as soon as I heard the path play and saw the credits roll, I was hooked. I played the game over and over and over on repeat. At one point, I was even finishing the story several times a month, even as school got increasingly intense. I just couldn't get enough. And while I probably wouldn't do something like that today, I'm glad I did. Because of it, I came to know the game inside out, literally. Every single line said by every single character, every artifact, every little hidden nook and cranny, I know like the back of my hand to this day. Which is what's enabled me to make the kind of content I make on this channel. To say that a sequel to The Last of Us was all I ever wanted would be an understatement. Eventually, the announcement of Part 2 of course came, and it's safe to say that I was livid with excitement. But I had no one to really share it with. None of my friends had even played it, and I didn't know how to find anyone to discuss my theories and thoughts with. So, having played around with YouTube several times before, inspired by my favorite TLU YouTubers like NickA30 among others, I started posting TLU content on a channel I had created years prior, but not really used, in late 2017. Pretty much right after the very confusing Paris Games Week trailer had premiered. After that, I'm sure my channel speaks for the rest. Now the point here is not to bore you with my entire life story. Rather illustrate how a reality where Part 2 is either just a fantasy of hardcore fans or something that's far, far off into the future is all there's ever been. At least that's how it feels like to me, and I'm sure to many other fans as well. It was always that mysterious thing to endlessly discuss theories about, to overanalyze every little detail of, to rant about the lack of information of, and to have as a constant treat to look forward to. It's been the main and pretty much only driving force of my channel, and I'm not so sure how to feel about all of that changing in less than 2 weeks. As I said, it's a very strange feeling. Furthermore, if you've followed my community tab lately, you'll know that I was unfortunate enough, like many others, to have the game spoiled for me. Now, while that was and is of course very disappointing and frustrating, I have to say that being robbed of the opportunity to enjoy this final stretch of ramped up marketing and constant flow of new and exciting information on the game on this channel with all of you guys has been equally disappointing. As I said, a big reason I started making all of this content in the first place was that I wanted to have people to discuss, theorize, and just in general nerd out about The Last of Us with. But I, and a large portion of the fanbase already knowing massive story details, have just made that entirely impossible. Which, if you didn't know, is the reason for my absence in the past few weeks. I can't analyze anything, make breakdown videos, nor come up with elaborate theories and just pretend like I don't know how it goes down. And even if I could, the comment sections would just be full of people shooting everything I say down, with spoilers from the leaks. All of that, in combination with what I said earlier about the game finally coming out, being a weird feeling, has just left me with this, at least on a surface level, kind of indifference, during the time when I should be hyped out of my mind. Anyways, moving on. I've always maintained the standpoint that nothing will ever beat The Last of Us Part 1, and that we need to keep our expectations for Part 2 in check. I've made videos about the topic as far back as 2 years ago, when all we had were the reveal Empire's Games Week trailer. You simply don't catch lightning in a bottle twice. That's just not how it works. Does that mean I'm saying The Last of Us Part 2 will be bad? No, absolutely not. Given the astonishingly beautiful graphics and the silky smooth gameplay we've seen in the past 4 years, as well as Naughty Dog's pretty much flawless track record of amazing games, I'm sure it'll beat every other game this year and beyond, and be nothing short of a masterpiece. But I'm not comparing it to every other game this year and beyond. I'm comparing it to The Last of Us. That's a standard that just cannot be topped in my mind. Of course, pretty much every aspect related to the game itself is going to be vastly improved, and without a doubt more enjoyable. But there is just something about the story of the first game that clicked with me immensely, and I assume many others as well, that just cannot be replicated. And I'm not saying that because I got spoiled or because of the countless controversies that have popped up in the last month and a half. You don't need to look any further than my previously mentioned over 2-year-old video on this topic to know that that's true. I'm going to play the game. I'm going into it with an open mind, but most importantly, I'm going into it with my expectations in check. As should any hardcore The Last of Us fan. Doesn't mean I'm not hyped or that I'm not excited, it just means that I'm keeping my expectations in check. I don't know what I'll think of the game once whatever ending song is playing and I'm watching the credits roll in front of me. And despite how many people believe that they already know what they'll think, I believe nobody really does. That's not to say a lot of people won't dislike it or prefer the first game to it, and vice versa. Even Neil Druckmann himself has said as much. What I do know though is that I'll always be a devoted The Last of Us fan, and that game always will be very special to me regardless of what happens after Part 2. I know that I'll continue to nerd out about it with all of you guys here on the channel, and in the Discord server for a long time to come. 7 years of waiting are almost over, and soon The Last of Us will be forever different when its long-awaited sequel releases. While I think we all would have wished for this final stretch of the journey there could have gone differently, the best we can do now is to look forward. I'm sure once the game drops, I'll have a constant field day getting acquainted with all of the new lore, and I certainly look forward to sharing what I think about that here with you. Anyways, those are just my final thoughts on Part 2 and this very long journey we've all been on leading up until its launch. The next time I'll talk to you all on this channel will more than likely be in the first episode of my playthrough of it, which, unfortunately due to circumstances that are out of my control, will be sometime during the week following launch. Now, normally I'd ask you to give me your opinions and thoughts about the topics I've discussed in the comments down below. However, considering spoilers are all over the internet, I'll say do it at your own risk. Personally, I'm still staying away from all comment sections, including my own, to avoid getting spoiled further. But anyway, until next time, have a great day.